Imagine lying in bed, and instead of finding rest, your mind is overwhelmed with worries, anxieties, and the exhaustion of the day. No matter how hard you try, sleep simply won't come, and anxiety seems to feed on this state of wakefulness. But what if I told you that there is a way, in just 5 minutes, to transform this restlessness into a deep peace that leads to the most restorative sleep you've ever experienced? Sounds impossible, right? But that's exactly what you'll find in this powerful prayer based on Psalm 91. Get ready to discover how God's word can be the key to overcoming difficult sleep and bringing the serenity that your body and soul so desperately need. And believe me, you'll want to know how something so simple can be so effective. When night falls, bringing with it the silence and uncertainties of the day, it's natural for the mind to start wandering through the paths of worry. However, it is precisely at this moment that a word of faith can make all the difference. Imagine feeling the weight of problems on your shoulders, but suddenly, you hear a calm yet authoritative voice saying, "Trust in God, for He will never forsake you." It's like receiving an invisible hug that immediately relieves the tension and brings a sense of peace, even if the circumstances haven't changed yet. Pastor Antonio Jr., with his serene and confident voice, does just that. He begins his prayer as if extending a hand to someone standing at the edge of a cliff, ready to fall. "Believe in divine promises," he says, and these words resonate like music for those who were tuned into chaos until then. When you have faith, obstacles seem less threatening because there is a quiet certainty that God is in control. Remember that time when you thought there was no way out, but something unexpected happened and everything was resolved? That's the power of faith in action. But it's not just about waiting for God to solve everything like magic. It's about trusting that He has a plan, even if we don't understand it now. It's like walking with your eyes closed, guided by an invisible hand that knows exactly where to step. And this trust, this surrender, is what transforms a simple prayer into a powerful act of faith. The pastor gently reminds us that believing in God is like planting seeds in fertile soil. It may take time to see the sprout, but it will grow, bloom, and eventually bear fruit. In the midst of the storm, when everything seems to be falling apart, remembering the words of Psalm 91 is like finding a safe shelter amidst the chaos. Pastor Antonio Jr. reflects on this psalm, which invites us to seek refuge in God, our safe harbor in times of difficulty. Imagine yourself in a house during a storm. Outside, the winds howl and the rain pounds the windows, but inside, you are safe, protected by solid walls. This is how God is for those who trust in Him, an unshakable fortress that guards us from life's storms. When anxiety takes hold, bringing with it that lump in your throat, the words of Psalm 91 remind us that God is our fortress. It's like an invisible shield that protects us from the arrows of worry and fear. Perhaps you've been through moments when you felt the whole world was against you, and all that was left was that small spark of hope. And it is precisely in that spark that Psalm 91 ignites, turning it into a flame of faith, fueled by the certainty that God is present, even when everything seems lost. The pastor leads us to reflect on the nature of this refuge, questioning, where have you sought safety? In money, in people, in material things? Psalm 91 invites us to place our trust in God, the only one who can truly protect us from all harm. It is a call to reassess where we are placing our faith and to make a course correction, if necessary, to ensure we are following the right path, the one that leads to the peace and protection that only God can offer. And thus, we are prepared to understand that we are never alone, ever. There are moments in life when loneliness seems to be the only company, but it is precisely in these moments that the presence of angels becomes strongest. Pastor Antonio Jr. reminds us that even when everything seems dark, there are heavenly beings around us, sent by God to protect and guide us. Imagine walking down a dark path, not knowing what's ahead, but beside you is a silent, strong presence that you may not see, but you feel. These are the angels, sent to ensure that you are never truly alone. The message that God places angels around us is an indescribable comfort. Think of the times when you escaped a difficult situation, almost as if you were pulled away from danger at the last second. Perhaps, without you realizing it, it was the hand of an angel guiding you at that moment. It is a powerful reminder that divine protection is not just an abstract idea but a tangible reality that surrounds us every day. And so, the pastor invites us to open the eyes of faith to perceive this constant protection. But this protection is not just about deliverance from danger. It's also about guidance. The angels guide us away from the path of evil, whisper advice when we're about to make a wrong decision, and lead us back to the right path when we stray. It's like having a faithful friend by your side, always ready to offer wise counsel or a strong arm to lift you up. And so, the reflection on angels prepares us to understand that, with God by our side, we are stronger than any obstacle. Biblical examples are like lighthouses in the darkness, guiding us to the safe harbor of faith. Pastor Antonio Jr. takes us back to the time of Sarah and Abraham, a couple who, even in the face of impossibility, maintained unwavering faith in God's promises. Imagine living in a world where everything around you says it's impossible, but you still believe because you know that God is faithful. Sarah and Abraham's story is a living testimony that when God promises, He fulfills, no matter how unlikely it may seem. Sarah, who had lost hope of becoming a mother, was blessed with a child in her old age, proving that nothing is impossible for God. This example is a powerful reminder that God's promises are not limited by time or circumstances. Perhaps you are waiting for something that seems to be taking too long, or the conditions seem completely adverse. Sarah and Abraham's story teaches us to keep trusting, even when the wait is long and difficult, because God's faithfulness always prevails. And so, the pastor challenges us to reflect. What promise from God are you waiting for? The example of Sarah and Abraham is not just a distant story, but a living inspiration for those who today feel discouraged or on the verge of giving up. God has a perfect time for everything, and like Sarah and Abraham, we are called to trust in that time. Perhaps your promise has not yet been fulfilled, but that doesn't mean it won't happen. On the contrary, it may be a sign that something extraordinary is about to happen, just as it was for Sarah and Abraham. Amid the whirlwind of thoughts that surround us, peace is a precious but often scarce commodity. Pastor Antonio Jr. invites us to dive into this peace, a peace that does not depend on circumstances, but on a deep trust in God. Imagine being in a boat in the middle of a storm. The sea is rough, the wind blows strong, but deep down, you feel an inexplicable calm because you know the boat is safe. This is the peace that God offers, a peace that guards our hearts and minds in the midst of difficulties. When worries seem to overflow, the pastor's message reminds us that we can hand everything over to God. It's not about ignoring the problems, but trusting that He is in control and knows what's best for us. Remember that friend who always knows the right thing to say when you're troubled? God is that friend on an even deeper level. He not only hears our concerns but acts on them, giving us the serenity needed to face each challenge with our heads held high and our hearts at peace. And it is in this surrender that we find true freedom. The peace that the pastor speaks of is not a fleeting peace, but one that comes from knowing we are in the hands of a God who loves and guides us. It's like letting go of the ropes that bind us to anxiety and allowing the current to carry us, trusting that we are heading in the right direction. And so, as we immerse ourselves in this message of peace, we are prepared for the next step, receiving the protection and rest that only God can provide. The final prayer, led by Pastor Antonio Jr., is more than just a simple closing. It is an invitation to rest fully in God. At this moment, He guides us to a total surrender, asking for peace, protection, and rest. Imagine, after a long and difficult day, being able to finally lie down with the certainty that you are being cared for, that all the worries that once weighed on you are now in God's hands. It's as if each word of the prayer is a brick that builds a wall around your mind and heart, protecting you from any disturbance. The pastor, with his calm and assured voice, makes each request for protection and rest feel like an intimate conversation with God. It's not a formal prayer, but a conversation full of trust, like a child seeking refuge in the arms of a parent. He reminds everyone that even in the darkest moments, God is by our side, ready to guide and protect us during our sleep. And that's exactly what the prayer does. It prepares the heart and mind for deep rest, knowing that we are not alone. Finally, this prayer seals everything that has been said, creating an atmosphere of peace and trust that lingers even after the video ends. The words echo, reminding us that true rest comes when we fully surrender to God. So, when you turn off the lights and close your eyes, you can be sure that you are protected, guided, and that a new day will dawn, bringing with it the answers and blessings that God has reserved for you. And thus, with a peaceful mind, you are prepared to continue on this journey of faith. Have you ever stopped to think about how your life can change by applying everything you've learned here? Imagine having deep and restorative nights of sleep, feeling protected and at peace, regardless of the circumstances. It's not just a promise. It's a reality within reach of all who are willing to trust and follow this path. So, what is stopping you from taking the next step? Are you willing to leave behind the sleepless nights and start a new journey of faith? The change begins now, and you have the chance to transform your life. Leave a comment sharing how this prayer touched your heart, and subscribe to the channel to continue learning and strengthening your faith. And don't forget to activate the notifications so we can continue this journey together. Let's make this the beginning of a new chapter in your life.